Okay, I think we are live. So hello to anybody that's joined the live recording, and hello to anybody who's watching the recording of this at some stage in the future. I'm Paul Skelton. I am a payments headhunter and host of the Payments Interviews, and this is our first ever Payments Interviews live. And I'm very happy to welcome Natalie to the show today. Hi, Natalie.
Hello, Paul. Thank you for having me. Brave move, bold move, putting me on your first live, but I'll try. You have been.
Absolutely. There seems to be quite a community of people who are looking forward to see what you might say. So perhaps before we get started, you can introduce yourself in terms that you would like to be introduced.
Thank you. Paul, I am rapt to be here with you just because I have found you to be such a brilliant contact and just in the industry, in the payments landscape. So from my perspective, coming in from the Australian market and sort of networking with that UK base has been fantastic. I have been in the payment space for about 10 years now and am looking to sort of expand that career out to whether it's Sydney, Melbourne, UK, just quite fond of some of the fintech companies in the UK and just how many there are. So I'm looking to adventure towards that in the right capacity. But I just wanted to say thank you for all your support in doing so. You've been fantastic.
You're very welcome. And that will 100% sound like I've put you up to that. So the check is in the post.
I don't think anybody that knows me thinks that that's what will happen. And I don't know if they know you and they think that's what you did, but that's on you, mate.
Fair enough. So anyway, one thing I always like to ask people at the beginning is when you started out, what was it you first wanted to do? So for me, for example, like I always say I wanted to be a barrister because I did a law degree and that was the thing that I wanted to do. But in reality, I really wanted to be an actor, but I thought that was never happened because I'm British. So what was your first dream? What is it that you wanted to do?
Well, when I was about 6, my mum was very keen on, education. We're going to put you in private school, continue that, blah, blah, blah. And then one day Dad asked me, what would you like to do when you grow up? And I turned around with a straight face and just said, I'm going to be a comedian. And let's just say that wasn't taken very well. He did not find that funny, ironically. So I thought, I'm going to switch gigs. No, I actually always wanted to be in psychological science in the sense of corporate psychology or neuropsychology. So when I went to university, that's where I thought I would end up, especially in the corporate psychology. You've got those TV shows out at the time that I think it was Ballers, and I'm looking at that going, yeah, I want to do that. And then the GFC hit just as I'd finished my degree and went, oh no, I don't think there's going to be a lot of budget for a corporate psychologist in-house at the moment. So yes, that was my initial thoughts of what I was going to do.
Interesting. Yeah. Bachelor of Psychological Science. And Ballers, that was the one with the Rock in, right? Dwayne Johnson, wasn't he in Ballers?
No, the guy who's got orange hair.
Oh, okay. We're obviously thinking of a different
Yeah.
No. I don't know what that is, unless it's Damian Lewis. He's the only one I can think of with the orange hair. Unless we're
I think that might be him.
from the Muppets. Anyway, so from that, you obviously had to make a bit of a change of direction. So how is it you ended up going into your first role?
It's a bit of a long story, but long story short, I got headhunted by a consulting firm. It was sort of like a smallish private consulting firm. And one of the projects I got put on was to work for a very, very, very high net worth individual. And a huge sort of gamut of different regions, different countries, different verticals in where the businesses would operate. And I sort of got thrown into it. It wasn't that I probably didn't even know what I was doing. I'm still finishing my, psychology exams and starting as this corporate consultant. And I can't say I knew firstly what I was getting into on day one. I just thought, okay, corporate consulting, I can do this. I've always loved business. How hard can this be? And then I started to do more and more work for this particular individual and ended up working for him essentially full-time for a number of years, and it was just the most fascinating. I don't think I'll ever have a job that was that brilliant. And I say it was quite different. There are lots of different things on different days. Some days I was turning businesses around, changing their profitability, starting new businesses. Some days I'd get called to meetings at 3 a.m. in the morning. Some days I would have detailed security on me. It was just a brilliant role. And I really
from a film.
So
Sounds like something from a film.
It honestly was, and I loved every second of it. I think going into it thinking my career was going to be one way, working for this particular individual shaped so much of why it changed and when it changed. I remember being in one particular meeting when it had all the top lawyers, all the top sort of accountants, everyone in the room, and I remember it was a deal with the Packer Group. He was looking at something for that, and I remember sitting there thinking, I just don't know if I can sign off on these things. Like, I wasn't on that particular deal, but I was in the room thinking there's a lot of things he'll just say, go and sign off on. And so one day I went to him and I said, I need to go and do my MBA because I'm not equipped to go and make these decisions while you're overseas or to support in my recommendation. And so he goes, okay, I'll write the recommendation. So back then you had to do 10 years in management experience to get into your MBA. And I was a bit shy of that. So he wrote a letter, quite a strong letter, which worked out really well. And then in order to just support the role that I was in, because I loved it so much, I did. That's when I enrolled into my MBA and went, okay, business is probably where I think I'll end up.
Okay. And so did you do your MBA while you were there?
I did. I don't know how I didn't go grey or bald all at the same time. I don't think I slept. So I don't sleep very well now, but I don't think I slept for about 3 years. And of course, he's in different countries. His team's in the UK, Hong Kong, Australia. And so I remember one time I was at a venue and there's security cameras. He owned one of the venues and he saw that I was there and he just landed from Hong Kong, and next minute, he's at the venue. He's found him. Oh, we need to have a meeting. Come on, let's go. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that. I wasn't probably in the best state to go and have that conversation, but nonetheless, that's what we did. So I just really enjoyed it.
What did your friends think about this job then? I'd imagine they probably found it the more interesting of the sort of grad jobs that everybody else had.
Look, there are definitely perks that came with that job, but I think ultimately it was difficult. It was difficult to not be able to attend things all the time or even just be present. You know, you go to a birthday and you're outside on the phone all night. So it bodes well when the fancy dinners come and all the invites are there, but it doesn't when you're, too consumed in something. So
I get that.
Pros and cons.
So obviously that's an example of a leader you worked for. I'm always interested. What did you learn from that leader? What have you learned from other leaders in your career? What's mattered to you and stuck with you?
I've been really lucky enough to have my initial sort of very tenured man be able to just instill things in me that, like, I've always been quite sales centric in terms of I can do that. Yeah, if I put my mind to something, I'm going to do that. But at such a young age, to have so much responsibility put on me. I mean, one time I said to him, "You're mad." I actually said, "You are mad. You've got anyone else you can pay. I don't even know how to do that." And I was doing general ledgers and reconciling, and I'm thinking, I don't really think I'm that good at accounting. Like, get someone else to do it. Why are you making me do it? And he goes, well, I can buy those skills, but I can't buy the trust I have in you. I can't buy integrity. Look around the room, whatever you want. You want another lawyer, you want another accountant, I'll buy it. But I want you to deal with the family business, the family matters in these accounts. So I think from then, he was very, very hard on me in a lot of ways. There was no, you're just, 19 years old and studying psychology and not business, and how on earth are you meant to? It wasn't that. It was, here's a problem. You will fix it. Tell me what you need. You will fix it. And it was just a level of performance that, you know, I used to get to work every day. I'd always get in an hour, 2 hours earlier before my day would start. I'd stay 3 hours late just to set things up to make sure. But he was probably one of the only bosses that would also do the same. He would stay, he would order takeaway. Oh, I know you're going to be, I'm going to support that, but I need you to redo 10 more reports, or I need you to do this. So it wasn't this like luxury handout of a job. It was difficult, but it set me up like to elevate your work ethic, to be able to look at problems and solve them, because you do not have a choice. You've got to get this done. So I think for me, that was really fundamental. I've only had, I would say, 2 absolutely catastrophic leaders, like just terrible, which, you know.
And why? What was so catastrophic?
I think for me, having disingenuous leaders is almost counterintuitive for me. I think, you know, people say you learn a lot what you can do from someone who's not a great leader. Yeah, I think most of it's common sense anyway. I think a lot of it is common sense, but I sort of take what I can from that and go, by not being, you can leverage your power, right? You can leverage the fact that you sit in the seat. You can leverage the fact that you've got, you know, you're a certain ranking of employment. But if you're not genuine, or you don't know the market, you're just sitting there trying to drive. It's like, do you earn respect? Do you command respect? And I think that for me, I saw that not optimized workforces. Whereas I look at, yes, I've worked previously insane hours, but for someone who was there supporting that, you know, driving that behavior, not just sort of saying, you work for me, go and do that, and I'm just going to go, you know, do something else during the day. It just doesn't drive a lot of engagement, I've seen. So for me, it's always better if someone's genuinely interested in the business. They want their teams to succeed. They want to do, you know, above and beyond. And those leaders for me have always fueled that. Okay, that was great, but you can do better next time. And you build that high performance mentality.
Okay. And so, I mean, there's some obvious ways that this might be the case, but how has that informed the way you lead? Because you've obviously gone on from that formative stage of your career to be a leader yourself and be a CRO. So how have those lessons stuck with you? What bits have you kept? What bits have you added to it?
I think the tricky part for me in terms of leadership is that I started in people management. Directly after consulting, I started managing those businesses. And so being, you know, 18 years old and managing teams, people have been in these roles longer than I have been on the planet. So this is going to be fun for me, right? I'm going to come in and have to completely change a business, and I'm going to stand on my tippy toes to look up and say, actually, we're going to do it this way. It was challenging then in certain ways, but it always led to high performance. So being accountable, because I think that for me, there's always things you can't filter on. You can't tell your staff everything all at once. But if you're accountable and you have that genuine intent to lead, even the difficult conversations, you can push through. What I've found has been so different is how I've had to adapt to a degree my leadership style through different situations, through leading through a global pandemic, through leading the first half of my career having quite older demographics of management that was, you know, trying for me because I was young and female, and it was mainly male dominated. Average age was about 60s. Again, I would have been 19. So that sort of carried on until my recent role in Payment Logic. And this is an interesting one, because it was probably the first time I had to lead quite a younger demographic as well. And I had a really tenured sales team, really strong sort of operational routine going on. And the CEO came to me and goes, look, we've got this kid, really high IQ, but we want you to, you know, keep doing what you're doing, start the division, go get us up and running, but we want him to work with you. And I said to him, absolutely not. There's no way. Why? No, like in my mind, I don't have time for this. If this child is like 18, no, like I've never managed that before. And so I'm thinking, oh gosh, I don't know, like you're not telling me what to do with him. You're just telling me that he's got a really high IQ. But do you have a role for him? Do I, like, what's my budget for this? What do I do here? I can't say I was happy. I was, in fact, quite visibly saying, I do not want to do this. And then by the end of the conversation, my CEO goes, oh, this isn't a question. This is not a choice. I'm telling you, this is what you got to do. Anyway, so he's probably going to kill me if he hears this, but I watched him for about a week, this young kid, right? I watched him come in. He would come in. It was like a choose your own bloody adventure. He'd walk in. I'd look at the clock and think, I've been here for 4 hours already. He'd walk in. I think, this is tech, but what are you wearing? I would just look at it and go, what am I going to do with this? So about after a week of just seeing exactly what, he seemed to be making a couple of calls, choosing bits of, I think, a lot of customer service before I got there, tasks. And I put him in this glass room in this office. And so you've got to make these calls. And any sales rep will know, usually that means you're going to have a terrible run. This is going to be a hard conversation. You're going to get some money back or, something's gone wrong. In this case, it was a positive thing. Hey, tell them that they're actually going to get X amount more bonus. They didn't know before. You get to be the one to tell them. Anyway, he looks at me and goes, okay, yeah. I said, this is who you got to call. This is the account. I thought it was pretty straightforward. It was all positive news. So he gets a pen and paper and he starts like scribing. I said, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm writing a script. I said, script for what? He goes, for the phone call. I said, no, you're not. He goes, yes, I am. You can't stop me. I said, okay. So he picks up the phone. Oh, I've never seen anything like this. It was like watching a train wreck. This conversation that should have been, hey, here's your bonus points. Congratulations, might moved on. I couldn't even listen. At some point, I remember just looking around going, oh my gosh, what is he doing? And he looked at me. I said, how do you think that went? And he goes, pretty well. I said, surely not. Anyway, so I then threw all the, I placed all of the things that were on the desk on the floor, scattered them, these objects around the room. And he's just looking at me like, you are mad. And I don't know why I'm here. And I'm thinking, yep, that'll make you and I both.
Yep.
I said, I want you to hop from this end to the room to that end to the room. And I want you to just navigate through every single pen or book that I've put on this floor. Hop to me. And he goes, everyone can see me. I said, be that as it may, come on. So he hops around the room. He's zigzagging with his face of this is awful. Fair enough. And then I said, now you're going to make the second call. Same thing. Add the bonus calls in. And he goes, all right. He does it. And he's got his little script there. But I pulled the script off him as he was dialing, which I can't tell you. The look he gave me, he was very, very angry with it. I wasn't going to make any apologies about it. I told you he didn't need the script. So he makes the call. And the call goes really, really well. Like 80% improvement. It's not a hard call. But he did so well in it, even though I took his script away. And then I said to him, now walk from there to here in a straight line. And he goes, okay. So he does it. I said, that's what your call was like. When you had the script, you were all over the place. Sales is, even for the easiest conversations, it's intuitive. You can't learn it. You can't have scripts. This is not how this works. It's not a call center. I'm going to do this differently. And so I did everything with him differently. A couple of months later, the CEO comes up to me and goes, oh, he doesn't like running reports. Like, could you keep him more engaged? I went back and tripled his amount of reports and made him do nothing but that for a week. You don't get to dictate. You're learning here. You do not get to come in. Anyway, he then became my right-hand man as I stepped into CRO. He had multiple promotions. He is actually a good friend of mine now. We work so well together, and he was highly, highly intelligent. Thank God for that. But the leadership and guidance, that was something I had to do differently. When you have sales teams and your operation teams, you're managing adults, it's so different. I never would have thought that would have been part of my journey. Okay, everyone starts at 8:30. I get in at 6:30. That's not for anyone else, but you're going to start getting in at 8:15. Why? You're going to start that cadence, right? Because that way you're never going to miss a meeting that I might be in, that I might have the opportunity to grab you in, right? That's why, not because of anything else. And so now he's got this cadence, this discipline. He's moved into quite a good company. I'm so proud of him. I know you've got 2 kids and you're probably saying, I'm so proud of him every day, but I only get to say this here. Promoted within 6 months, it just was a real lesson of how my leadership had to change and how the approach on that had to change. It was very different to the way I'd led initially, but was still able to drive good results.
That's a real relief, because I did worry at one point you were going to say, where is he now? Oh, he's in rehab. He's unfortunately.
I mean, that's honestly where I thought he would be. But he actually put it on his LinkedIn. I saw that he wrote this. I don't know if it's still on there, but he actually put, when I first started, my boss made me do this, and it changed the way I viewed X, Y, Z. And so you go, sometimes when you're told, gently, he's only young, and let him wear this, let him do that. So it doesn't provide that guidance all the time for leadership, which I know, controversial in its own way, but he's so good and he's so successful. Huge amount of guidance.
It sounds like, from what you said, that you had an unconventional introduction to work, and you were able to use that to tailor your approach rather than just follow something out of a book, really. So maybe your unconventional first role really helped you find something that was appropriate for the challenge in front of you.
I think so. I think it just was very, very outside of the box to start with, and I've never managed to get inside that box and stay in it. So it works well for me.
Okay. And so what would you say is the best advice you've ever received? I can remember in my first job, someone I really respected said, just keep it simple. Nothing's that difficult. Keep it simple. And I thought, right, that's going to be the cornerstone of everything I ever do from here on out. And in some ways that served me well. In other ways, it's probably, if I'm honest, not. So what's been the thing that's stuck with you? Normally most people have something. What's yours?
I think looking back, it was probably, again, in the early stage of my career when I was working for that super wealthy family, just a couple of things that he would always just say to me, and I'd be like, if I do this decision, this is the impact. If I do this decision, which is the less of the two evils? And his response would always be, and walk off. He would smile and just walk off. And I would get so angry. Why do you do this? Why do you just smile at me and walk off? I'm genuinely asking a question about your business. So one day I followed him. I was going to follow him in my little high heels, like just chase him into the office. Why did you do that? Why do you keep smiling at me? And he goes, you're going to find this very difficult in your career. But the problem will be for you is you already know. You know what the right thing to do is. The conflict of what comes out of that, you might need help managing that, but you already know. Don't move from that. And so I thought that was quite a powerful thing from someone of his position to say something like that, to walk out. And he would walk out. You'll figure it out. You'll know the right decision. So, most people say trust your gut, which I probably wouldn't. I just would have ignored that as a saying. Like, that's a stupid thing to say. But given the context, which it's not, but, given the context of knowing that, if you know what the right thing to do is, it doesn't make it easy to make that decision, because it might have other impacts. And so I've sort of kept that premise, which sometimes gets you into a lot of trouble. Sometimes you're very, very unpopular. Other times you're the hero of the day. But knowing that if you do know what the right thing to do is, even regardless of the consequence, that's what you should do, has always been pretty strong for me. Okay, interesting. And so you've obviously been in a very unconventional organization. You've been in a big company in American Express. You obviously saw the need for having that kind of structure and blue chip experience. But then you've gone to a smaller company and you've worked in smaller companies. What's the biggest mindset shift you think you need to have when going from a big company to a startup or a scale-up? Oh, it's a big mindset shift. It's two things. One, you're making a choice. It's a choice. It's all it is. It is a choice, and not everyone wants to make that choice. Some people prefer that choice. But corporate to startup are so vastly, vastly different that it's not for everyone. I think there's a lot of benefits of both. I actually quite like both. I love corporate. I loved my time at Amex. I had some fantastic leaders there. And I love the structure of it. I think it's great. You look at startup and there's, you've got more agility, more, more flexibility in some ways, but I think it's a huge mind shift. Definitely a mind shift. It can be quite challenging if you're used to corporate and corporate only. And I think because I'd had that SME and startup sort of experience prior to American Express, I didn't have zero platform going to startup, if that makes sense. I'd had most of my career in that already. Went into American Express, went, this is fantastic. You know, like things are structured, the right people have the right say, things make sense. And then you go to startup and it's very different. So I think if you're going to do it, understand that they are different, but they do have some benefits. There are things where, you know, I think the first couple of months, I was like, oh no, what have I done? I just didn't understand certain mindsets, right? And you put founder led in a startup business, and that's a completely different game altogether. So just know you're making a choice. Is that the right choice for you? And I look at both and go, blend them. Each could learn so much from each other. But I think there is a bit of stubbornness in market to not be the same as each other. Mainly startups will not necessarily take on all the negatives of corporate. But you don't have to. You just take what works and do it your way. So,
okay. So, what's an example of something that really worked when going into a startup that you brought from the corporate world, and perhaps something that you thought, oh no, this definitely isn't going to work, and I didn't anticipate this?
This is gonna cause a lot of controversy for some.
Ideal.
Structure, right? Let me tell you, you walk into any startup, any fintech, and they're going to say, we don't have ego, we have a flat structure here. You have the ability to be agile and fast, and a flat structure can sometimes mean too many cooks in the kitchen, no cooks in the kitchen, and no bloody dinner on the table. Structure is actually, people do actually want structure, and I'm not talking about unnecessary structure. People do want to know, okay, what's my responsibility? What's your responsibility? If I need help with something, who do I go to? It's like ants running around on the field and you're going waving the flag saying, we've won, we don't have structure. No, you need structure to have some kind of efficiency.
So on that point, I have to really agree. And when I worked in a startup, I was part of the senior management team at a company. One thing that used to drive me mad is when people said, we should definitely do this. And you go, okay, who's we? Like, because there's only 5 of us in this room. One of us is the one that needs to be responsible for it.
Yeah.
Are you saying it's you? Because if you're not, then you should make it very clear about who the person is that is this we. And it used to drive me insane. I don't know if you came across that.
Oh, the amount of frustration was quite high. So I ended up putting structure all across the business. Like, these are the teams, these are who you report to, this is how we're going to operate, which worked a lot better, I felt. But it's that concept. Oh no, we don't want structure. There are ways to structure businesses that work for that business. But just because corporate has structure doesn't mean startup needs to have zero. It doesn't. You're negating what you have, which should and always be agility. Your speed to market, I love that. I love being able to go and get a sprint completed without having 18 heads of have to sign off on it. It meant that I could be more competitive in the market instead of having to wait, to get approval, to get things done. So yes, definitely. There's a couple of things. I think also, well, I don't know about post-COVID, but you have kids, they play sport, right?
Yeah.
Do they wear a uniform?
What, when they're doing the sport? Well, yeah. They have team outfits they have to wear. Yeah.
I think that as a concept is a really interesting one to observe between corporate and startup as well. Corporate does have X amount of dress requirements and whatnot. I know that's changed significantly through COVID. And startup takes a more casual, flexible in every aspect approach. But there are benefits to both, right? There's almost a way to meet in the middle. And I remember some of my sales team, we're in tech now. So we used to work together at Amex. We're now in tech. The boys like, great, we don't have to wear shirts. We're going to wear T-shirts, blah, blah, blah. I would jump on a couple of calls And the CEO of huge companies would say, okay, actually, could we have a meeting now? We want to go through this payment structure. I couldn't bring any of them in. There's no way. In fact, the only one that would have been brought in that day would have been the one that wore a shirt on. He would have got a multi-million account, because I wasn't going to bring someone in a hoodie and a cartoon top to have that meeting. So I think you don't need to wear a suit. You don't need to wear a tie if you're in a role that doesn't require you to be client facing. But, there are bits and pieces. It's just to take what works and apply it, not look at it and go, no.
Yeah, fair enough. And okay, so specifically to payments, what is it that there's lots of opinions about payments. I get into conversations about this a little bit. I put up a post recently where I said, stop boring people about how much you find payments interesting when all your clients care about is having their problem solved. They're not interested in how much you love it. And loads of people piled in saying, yeah, I completely agree. It's all about the customer. And one person said, no, completely disagree. And I thought, some people just get it wrong a bit. What is the thing that you hear people saying about payments that really winds you up, or that you think isn't true?
I actually heard what you're referring to when I was on your LinkedIn, and I started laughing. I thought, A, rookie, you're selling it wrong. You're talking about it wrong. But B, from the space I've come from, I've got the luxury of talking about payments with rewards. And I think that is the absolute game changer, because it's not about, this process has this merchant vendor and it gets that. And, you're at a barbecue and someone's just looking for a way to burn a steak to get out of talking to you. Like that's not how you do it. And I think you also sort of see this in go-to-market strategies for product like this with payments. Don't talk about the product. Don't talk about the payment. Talk about what it gets you. Is it mitigated risk? Because the CFO at a barbecue wants to hear about that. Is it one of your friends is like, why are you always on a plane? Why are you always on a first class seat? Why do you never fly economy? What are you doing? Well, I put all my payments through on my card and I use the points to travel. That is interesting. Anyone that's speaking about payments in a way that isn't interesting, probably rethink that conversation, I think. Because if I was to say to you, Paul, do you want to come see me? All right, let's book you a ticket. Don't worry, we'll use your points that you've been leveraging all your payments off. Do you want to go business or first? You make that choice. Does that sound boring to you?
No, no, it doesn't. But it's amazing how many people just don't get that basic concept. I mean, it's similar with my line of work. Like, I could talk about the fact that I do retained search and I work on an exclusive basis to find the best candidates. And I've built relationships up over the 7 years I've worked here, and the fact that I've worked in the industry. No one cares about any of that. And quite right too. What they do care about is the fact that I could find them quickly a salesperson that could add 3 million onto their turnover by the end of the year. And do it effortlessly without them having to stress about looking at mountains of inappropriate CVs and knowing that the whole process could be done in 6 weeks. That's interesting, because it's the end result of recruitment. Nobody's interested in recruitment. People are interested in what the benefits of it are, and it's the same principle, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, God, there are some things in life that are boring, and let me assure you, payments, I don't think is one of them. But then again, it depends who you're talking to.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about you and where you're at now. So I know from having spoken to you over the last few weeks, more often than I've spoken to many family members, that you're, the next stage of your career could well be over here. And over here, we're quite used to seeing lots of negative press about the UK and how slow we are and how there's not enough unicorns over here compared to America, and we're not even in the battle for this because of regulation and it's always cold and we're going to lose the cricket and we're going to all be at war, which is all, a lot of that's not true. But and what is it that you see that makes you think, and sign me up for all of that?
Well, I think a couple of things. I genuinely have heard all of that. And I go, yeah, that's fine. That's what I'm good at. I'll either build something from the ground up, or I'll go where there's not enough motivation, there's not enough, and I'll turn that around. So for me, that's not a bad thing, right? In a market that feels like that, that's a challenge I'm happy to take on. But I think wherever my next role is, where it's Melbourne, where it's Sydney, whether it's the UK, I will follow that role. And I think in the UK, the market for fintech is actually so much better. I've got a handful in Australia, a handful, 2 of which I've worked at. So there's not too much here, unless it's, one of the really, really enticing companies to play. But from a large perspective, you've got Revolut, you've got, Go Cardless, you've got Blink Payments, you've got Apron, you've got every possible option in every part, from merchant to processor. It's a bloody exciting market to come and play in. And you could almost dance around it all. There's fintech, Canary Wharf. You've got fintech hubs, like actual physical hubs. I've heard there's like pub crawls for fintechs. That is fantastic. I'm all for that. So I do hope it's in the UK. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And for me, opportunity doesn't look like, oh, that company's doing really, really well and, it looks cruisy and easy. No, let me come in there, let me build it, let me fix it, let me completely restructure it. That to me still sounds like opportunity, even if the weather's bit colder and the beer's a bit warmer. I'll have to live with that.
We're gonna have to definitely educate you on the benefits of warmer beer. We'll take
that one offline. I'll see you in Feb, and let's see how I go with that.
Cool. And I realised that we're knocking on here in terms of time. But one thing I'd be interested, I know that a lot of people I speak to are very interested in what a CRO does. Tell me a bit about the kind of things that you do as a CRO that was a step up from what you did, when you were more junior to that role. Give us an idea of what your week would involve.
So I was a sales director at the last company I worked at before I was CRO. And so I would focus solely on the dollars that came out from the sales team, what was going in, what was coming out. Any dollar that came from that, fantastic. How do I model that? How do I train them? How do I absolutely optimize that? When I stepped into the CRO role, it was on a wider scale. So essentially the way I'd explain a CRO role is every dollar that comes in that business as revenue, you're responsible for. You're responsible for creating it, for ensuring the profitability of those dollars are actually beneficial, the sustainability of those dollars coming in. So you're not just, yes, sales will always be a great part of it, but you have to potentially drive new revenue streams, go into establishing partnerships, product. Let me tell you, when I realized that to go into product to bring in more revenue as a strategic piece, I thought, oh no, I don't know how I'm going to go in these tech meetings. And everything I said was wrong. Me trying to speak to tech, I would look left, excuse me, we'd look right in this meeting. It just was not my language. But it was part of bringing revenue in to the role. And so I would say anything that comes in, anything you're trying to bring in, whether it's partnerships, marketing, sales, account management, product development, that really should sit with your CRO or whoever your sort of commercial officer that you have in place. And it is a fantastic role, especially at startups. If I could do this role again for the next 10 years of my life, I would be absolutely stoked. You spend more time influencing than you do, sometimes doing, but you still get a good balance in a startup of rolling your sleeves up, writing the strategy and then helping execute it. So that's sort of what my role has been like for the last couple of years. And I hope that I can continue to do that or have that same principle where here's the revenues coming in. How do I impact that?
I've no doubt that you will. And the force of nature that you are, I'm sure that you'll be a great asset to whoever's lucky enough to have you next. I think that in closing, 2 things. One, where would people be able to get hold of you if they want to speak to you? Where would be the best place for people to speak to you?
Probably the pub. I'm joking. Definitely LinkedIn, I think at the moment has never been more powerful. I'm pretty responsive on LinkedIn and it seems to be a really good way to connect. Even from your podcast, I've had the preview thing that you put up, which went up a couple of days ago. I've had some email come in, and yeah, okay, cool, would love to meet. So it's been probably the best source of just dealing with different time zones and understanding where people are to then book meetings. LinkedIn does make it pretty easy.
Great stuff. And from my perspective, if you're listening to this and you think that you'd like to be a guest on the payments interviews, then the QR code that you can see just up there, if you scan that, you'll be able to have a chat with me about that. Natalie, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Is there anything that you wish that I'd asked that I hadn't asked?
No, I think I'm just sitting here going, have I passed this test? Like, how much are you going to have to audit, edit, God knows what? But I think we're all right.
I think we're all right. There's been no obscenities so far, so we'll take that as a win. And yeah, I've no doubt you'll be a great asset to whoever you go to next. Thanks very much for speaking to me.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
And thanks for tuning in. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.